there, I'm going to talk about Master Gardener, which is the new Paul Schrader film, released in the summer, but I finally got to see it. It basically came and went in the cinema and on streaming and everything else. It's one of those films that is low budget, so it didn't have to make much money to make his money back, because it's a low budget film. Schrader makes films at a limited budget because his films are not going to make a whole lot of money in the box office. They're art house films. They're not going to the multiplexes. They're not going to the local cinemas where they might show a sort of one or two indie films if it's a horror movie or something, but they're not going to. Or if it's an uplifting film, they're not going to show you a depressing film. So it's got a limited reach. So as a responsible person, Schrader writes his films for a low budget. He hires actors who might be in some of these bigger films, but they might not get such great parts. So he makes some parts here that makes them lower their going rate and actually be in the film. So in the last few years, Schrader's had a bit of a comeback in this model. He's had Ethan Hawke with First Reformed. He had Oscar Isaac with the Card Counter, both terrific films. And now is the end of his kind of trilogy of Men in Rooms, because he always did Men in Room films from like Taxi Driver onwards, with American Gigolo, Light Sleeper, The Walker. He used to do them every so often, but now he's doing them a lot more because he's coming to the end of his career. I think it's things he wants to get out of his system and do. So he's done 3 in a row, and this one is Joel Edgerton, and it's Master Gardener, which is about a gardener who obviously has a past. Now, Schrader characters always have a past of some sort, even if you don't actually know what the past is, and even if you don't actually understand the character, you get a sense of where they came from and what the problem is. And in this case, it's about a guy who was a neo-Nazi. He was born into it, and he didn't question it till a certain point when he realised just how wrong he was. And he comes out of it. He actually goes into witness protection and actually gives evidence against his former colleagues. Now, during this time, he killed people. He was a murderer. Somebody he has to live with. So now he's a gardener. He learned how to garden, and that's becomes his focus. That becomes his, his rock to keep himself sane in the world, is to focus on gardening. So he's got tattoos and all the rest of it, but he covers them up. Now, he could get rid of them, but he doesn't. And the sense is he hasn't forgiven himself for what he did. He doesn't want anyone close to him, so that's the metaphor. He does not want these tattoos gone because he wants to know, to be able to look at himself and know who he was. So he's not quite got over what he was and what his beliefs were. And it's a bit the idea of how do you develop redemption when you can't really forgive yourself, really. And if you're brought up to hold abhorrent views that are irrational, insane, just wrong, how do you move on from that? Now, his idea is to he's focused on gardening because he's lost his wife, he's lost his daughter. His daughter thinks he's dead. He's not allowed by witness protection to actually contact them, and just for the law, they do not want anything to do with him. Understandably, because what they know of him is he was a thug, he was a horrible person. So he now is the main garden in this private garden, and it's owned by Sigourney Weaver as this madam character who has a lot of money but doesn't have real friends. She's too biting and uses people. She prefers people at a distance. She prefers people under her thumb rather than to communicate. She does not like someone who can talk back to her. She wants people to she wants the world to work the way she wants it to work. She does not want it to work the way the world works. But she's enough money to isolate herself and actually do that. So she has the garden to perfect, and she hires a few gardeners. She's using money to hire a few gardeners, and Joe Edgerton's the main gardener. And because he's so dedicated, it's his focus, it's his way of not falling back into the system. It's his way of trying to become decent, even though he doesn't feel decent. He still feels like he's got a lot of that stuff in the system that has to be contained, has to be. So the idea, the metaphor for the gardener is containing the wildness within by containing the wildness of the garden. And into this setup that has kind of stagnated. I mean, he's doing okay, but it's stagnated. He's just writing these journals, and he's starting to wonder why anymore, because what they're actually doing for him. Comes this young woman who's Weaver's niece, basically her sister or grandniece. Her sister had a daughter who was troubled, and then the sister died, and the grandniece is all troubled. She has a drug problem, but to get her out of her situation, Weaver gives her a job as a gardener and asks Joe Edgerton to train her. Now this young woman is black, and actually he does have a problem. He's moved on from that, but as the film goes on, they do develop an attraction for talking and him showing decency to her, basically. But also as they talk, they start to see each other's flaws. You know, it's not just like, oh, you're my escape from this world. It's like they see each other's flaws. I mean, as he gets more engaged by her, his violence does start to come back up a little bit. The sense of protection for her brings up the kind of sense that he can be violent if he needs to. He's choosing not to be now, but it's still there. It's still below the surface. It's something he can access if he needs to. And it is about him confronting his past through her, and her confronting her problems through him, which her problems are drugs and a lack of, like, she kind of falls back into patterns, and she needs to kind of get out of those patterns. She needs to get out of this world she was in, and she needs to be in a new world where those patterns don't come back, because basically, like him, she has her addiction issues, but if she's in an environment that doesn't really cater to that, she can survive it, and she just needs time to find new patterns to become addicted to, just like he is. Like, he's addicted to the gardening. It's a way for him to get all that energy out. Now, at the same time, Weaver's having an affair with Edgerton at the start, and she knows all his past. She knows she's his tattoos, obviously, and obviously she likes the violence within him that he's repressing. There's something there that really attracts her. And as soon as the grandniece starts to have a relationship with Edgerton, she gets jealous and throws them both out, which leads to other things, which I won't go into, but the sense is Weaver's kind of the catalyst for the change that because they suckle each other for a while, and Weaver, before they even have an affair, Weaver's suspicion of it, seeing the attraction, is a catalyst for them to face up to who they actually are and what they actually are. Now, Edgerton also has a probation officer, Isa Morales, who's really good, and he's like a guy who has to deal with these kind of disreputable people. Now, he gets on okay with Edgerton because Edgerton's actually trying. He's like one of the big successes. He deals with a lot of people in witness protection, and he has the successes like Edgerton's other ones will probably failures. But Edgerton's starting to see that as friendship, and it's really not, because Morales does not like him. Morales knows what he was, knows what he came from, and doesn't trust him, and is a bit with him, really. So there's that relationship too that's kind of being defined, and is a way of looking at Edgerton's past and how things are not so easy to actually forgive. And it's a slow film about forgiveness rather than the kind of rage. I mean, Schrader, in some of his other films, goes towards nihilism as the extension of the character. But in this one, it's actually someone who's actually trying to rise above that, but you still got the violent instincts. It's like, how do you rise above what you were taught to do, what you're trained to do, what your instincts tell you to do? How do you move above that? So that's why the film was so good. It's trying to do something different with Schrader's. I mean, before, it wasn't Schrader's nihilistic, it's actually an extension of the character's lack of hope for themselves and the lack of understanding of where they are, and the violence is kind of a explosion of the rage they're trying to suppress. And this one, it's like, how do you move beyond that? So it takes into account the idea that America is still a very racially divided country, even though the reasons for the race problems are really stupid, and a lot of them's economic, and because Schrader also shows there's a lot of mixing of race within the poorer communities, because if you're both poor, if you're poor, you're poor, and then you just mix. And if you're rich, you have the luxury of being prejudiced. Or if you're in a tribe, you have the luxury of being prejudiced. I mean, a tribe of all these white people, of course, going to be prejudiced. It's the different dynamics within society, and this is just a look at where that leads and how things are changing, but it's a very slow process. So it's a really good film. I don't think it's as strong as Card Counter or First Reformed, but I've only seen it once, and I'm still kind of processing it. But I still think it's one of the best films this year. It got muted response, which I get, because people said, oh, it's too slow, and it's like, no, it's not too slow, it's just, it's going for something that's not the same as what Schrader was going for before, and it takes its time. So I think if this is one of the films that's going to be reevaluated later down the line, you know, as something, a very good Schrader film. At the moment, I think it's got that kind of thing of, oh, it's not what we wanted. But that's what happens with some films. Is like, if it's not what people wanted initially, it takes a while for people to really appreciate it. So, yeah, it's still a terrific film, definitely worth seeing, and it's another really good Schrader film. I mean, him and Cronenberg are still proving you can do films in your 80s or late 70s, early 80s and make them good, unlike other directors. Right, that's me for now. I'll see you all later. Bye.